Good morning. Extending from just a few hundred miles up to, well, 22,000 miles above your head, there is a very silent, high-stakes choreography taking place.
I do.
You look up at the night sky, and it seems entirely peaceful, static. Comforting, really.
Yeah.
But right now, in the pitch black of Earth's orbit, billion-dollar rockets are being positioned, unannounced satellites are conducting close proximity maneuvers in the dark, and a geopolitical chessboard has rapidly expanded into the vacuum of space.
It is a profoundly dynamic and increasingly congested environment. What appears to you as empty space is fundamentally tied to how human civilization operates on the ground every single day.
Exactly.
And the intelligence we are looking at today shows that the line between scientific exploration and global security is, well, it is essentially vanishing.
Welcome to today's deep dive. Today is March 27, 2026, and our focus is Artemis II nears historic crewed deep space launch.
A monumental event.
It truly is. Over the next few minutes, we are going to explore the primary patterns of events in the space domain over the past 2 weeks, both regionally and globally. And we will be maintaining a strictly objective look at the facts, the decision-makers involved, and the shifting landscape of international competition.
Right. Presenting the reality of the situation without generating undue fear.
Precisely. But before we unpack all of that, we have a quick message about our sponsor, ProWave AI. Today's deep dive is generated by Stylo News, which is the AI-powered news application from ProWave AI.
And they are celebrating a milestone right now.
They are, yes. To celebrate their one-year anniversary of operations, ProWave AI is offering a March special discount. You can use the code STYLO, that's STYLLO, at www.stylonews.com for a discount.
Though it is worth noting that is valid only until the end of March and limited to the first 250 subscribers.
Good point. And just to give you a clear understanding of what that technology actually is, the Stylo News application is the consumer version of Stylo Intel Ops.
Yes. For those who aren't familiar, Stylo Intel Ops is a highly sophisticated software tool designed specifically for enterprise operations. It is used extensively by governments, militaries, and global businesses.
Right. So by utilizing Stylo News, you have unique direct access to an intelligence engine that was designed specifically to support global decision makers in real time.
It is an incredibly powerful tool, and it is exactly what we use to map out the complex global events we are bringing to you today.
We are looking at a historic return to the moon, a major billionaire strategic pivot, and the invisible shadow war currently happening in Earth's orbit.
All interconnected events.
Very much so. Let's start with the most visible global space event happening right now. Picture the massive rocket currently sitting on Launch Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
The Space Launch System.
Right, the SLS. On March 20th, the SLS, along with the Orion spacecraft, rolled out of the vehicle assembly building. But here's the fascinating part about this. It took 11 hours for the Crawler Transporter 2 to move this 332-foot stack, just 4 miles.
It is quite the methodical process.
I mean, think about that. It is essentially the most nerve-wracking slow-motion transportation job in human history, moving at roughly a third of a mile an hour. Why exactly is NASA taking things so meticulously slow?
Well, it comes down to the physics of the vehicle and the sheer stakes involved. We have to remember that this is the first crewed lunar flyby since Apollo 17 back in 1972.
Decades ago.
Exactly. You are moving a structure taller than the Statue of Liberty, filled with immensely delicate interconnected plumbing, sensors, and avionics. The slow, creeping physical movement of the crawler ensures that absolutely no undue vibrational stress is placed on the systems they have spent the last several months repairing and validating.
Right, because the reports highlighted a few very specific, highly technical hurdles they've been wrestling with. It wasn't just a matter of polishing the exterior for the cameras.
No, not at all. During previous testing, they encountered liquid hydrogen fuel leaks. Now, to understand why that happens, you have to look at the cryogenics involved.
Extreme temperatures.
Precisely. Liquid hydrogen is stored at minus 423 degrees Fahrenheit. When you pump a liquid that incredibly cold into a rocket, the metal components, the valves, the seals, the supply lines, they physically shrink and warp due to the extreme temperature change.
Thermal contraction.
Yes, that thermal contraction is how microscopic leaks form.
That makes perfect sense. The fuel itself changes the shape of the rocket's plumbing.
It does. They also had to resolve an anomaly with the helium flow in the upper stage, which was discovered during a wet dress rehearsal. Helium is an inert gas used to pressurize the propellant tanks.
Right, to push the fuel into the engines.
Exactly. If you lose that helium pressure, the engines can't draw the liquid fuel efficiently and you lose thrust. And perhaps most critically of all, they had to address concerns regarding the Orion capsule's heat shield.
Wait, I want to pause on the heat shield. We are talking about human lives sitting inside that capsule.
Yeah.
How does the heat shield actually protect them when they come back to Earth?
Well, when the Orion capsule returns from the moon, it hits the Earth's atmosphere at roughly 25,000 miles per hour. That incredible friction creates a plasma trail hotter than the surface of the sun.
Which is staggering to even visualize.
It is. The heat shield is ablative, meaning it is designed to intentionally burn away, carrying the extreme heat off and away from the spacecraft. If that material doesn't ablate perfectly evenly, the heat could penetrate the crew module.
That would be catastrophic.
Indeed. So when you are putting human lives on top of millions of pounds of explosive thrust and then dropping them back through the atmosphere in a fireball, every single seal and sensor has to be flawless.
And speaking of those human lives, we have a crew currently in a strict 14-day quarantine in Houston, Texas, prepping for this. We are talking about NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, and Christina Koch, alongside Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen.
Their quarantine is a vital standard procedure to ensure no latent illnesses, even a common cold, are carried into the confined, closed-loop life support environment of the Orion capsule.
Because you can't exactly open a window up there?
You cannot. But their presence also represents a critical facet of this mission: international partnership. Hansen's inclusion makes this a multinational endeavor, reflecting the collaborative framework of the Artemis Accords.
But let's look at the geopolitical strategy driving this. From an objective standpoint, the stated policy of the U.S. administration under President Trump has explicitly prioritized returning Americans to the moon by 2028 over a near-term Mars mission.
That is correct. Looking at the policies and the perspectives of decision makers, such as NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, a lunar return is viewed as a vital demonstration of American technological leadership.
And this ties directly into international competition, doesn't it?
It does, particularly with China, which has formally stated its goal of executing a crewed lunar mission by 2030.
Wait, a crewed mission by 2030, that is right around the corner. So it is very much a race, but one where NASA is actively changing the blueprint while building the house. The Artemis program was recently restructured to increase reliability. I'm looking at these changes and they seem massive.
They are significant, yes. They are pragmatic shifts designed to build capabilities step by step. To ensure a sustainable launch cadence, NASA is adopting United Launch Alliance's Centaur V upper stage for the future Artemis IV and V missions.
Why the Centaur V?
It is a proven technology that balances performance with schedule reliability. It mitigates the risk of relying entirely on brand new upper stage developments. Furthermore, Artemis III, which was originally slated to be the actual lunar landing, has been shifted.
Shifted how? What is the new plan for it?
It is now going to be a low Earth orbit test of the human landing systems. The actual crewed lunar landing is deferred to Artemis IV in 2028.
I see. So rather than risking everything on a single, overly complex leap where untested landing systems operate in deep space for the first time, they will test the landing hardware closer to home.
Exactly. They tested in low Earth orbit where abort options are far more viable.
Which brings us to the commercial side of this equation. NASA relies heavily on commercial partners to make all of this happen. But those partners have their own rapidly evolving agendas. Let's look at Elon Musk and SpaceX.
A major player in this domain.
Absolutely. Musk recently announced that SpaceX is shifting its near-term focus away from Mars colonization to building a self-growing city on the moon.
It is a major strategic pivot. For years, the overarching narrative and engineering focus of SpaceX has been Mars. Shifting focus to the moon aligns them more closely with NASA's immediate Artemis goals, which SpaceX is contracted to support with their Starship lunar lander.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though. Is this moon pivot actually a practical stepping stone for humanity? Or is this just a distraction from Mars, driven by the immediate financial realities of NASA commercial contracts?
It is a vital question to ask. If we look at the logistics and the physics objectively, the moon is a highly logical proving ground. The journey to the moon takes about 3 days.
And Mars is much longer.
The journey to Mars takes about 7 months. If you want to test closed-loop life support systems, radiation shielding, and in-situ resource utilization.
Which means mining local resources, right?
Yes. Mining local resources like lunar ice, melting it, and using electrolysis to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel. It is much safer to test that when Earth is a quick abort trajectory away.
Right, because if a water recycler breaks on the moon, you can just come home.
Exactly. On the moon, rescue or resupply is theoretically possible within a week. On Mars, because of orbital alignments, you are locked in. A critical system failure is fatal.
But this pivot is generating massive public debate. Looking at the social media sentiment gathered in our Stylo reports, it is very mixed.
It usually is with projects of this scale.
Yes, some users praise the pragmatism, saying the moon is a logical first step, but others are deeply worried about the environmental impacts down here on Earth. We are seeing this play out locally in Starbase, Texas.
With the Starship testing.
Correct. SpaceX's Starship version 3 testing, which uses the newly developed Raptor 3 engines, has led the SpaceX employee-led city to exercise new legislative authority to close Boca Chica Beach and adjacent highways.
And that has prompted immediate protests and lawsuits from local residents. This highlights the friction between rapid technological advancement and local community impact.
It's a difficult balance to strike.
It is. The testing of the Starship and its massive super heavy booster is absolutely essential for the Artemis program. But the physical footprint of that testing, the acoustic shockwaves, the environmental disruption, the access restrictions to public lands creates genuine conflict on the ground.
And while SpaceX pivots to the moon, planetary science hasn't abandoned Mars entirely. NASA just launched twin probes specifically designed to study Mars's atmospheric loss.
Yes, that is a crucial scientific endeavor. Understanding planetary habitability requires understanding why Mars lost its atmosphere. These probes will collect data on how solar wind strips atmospheric gases away.
Which will eventually inform those long-term Mars plans.
Precisely. And the commercial sector isn't just focused on colonization or transportation either. Blue Origin just announced their new NEO Hunter mission in collaboration with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Caltech.
And the mechanisms here are like something out of a science fiction novel.
They really are. It is a distinct, highly advanced capability utilizing their Blue Ring orbital platform. They are deploying nanosatellites equipped with ion propulsion technologies to analyze and potentially deflect hazardous near-Earth asteroids.
Okay, stop right there. How does a tiny nanosatellite deflect a massive mountain-sized asteroid? I'm assuming it doesn't just crash into it or blow it up like we see in the movies.
No, not at all. It uses physics over time. Ion propulsion doesn't provide the massive explosive thrust of a chemical rocket. Instead, it uses electricity to accelerate charged ions, creating a very gentle but continuous thrust.
So it's a slow push.
Yes. By flying a nanosatellite very close to an asteroid for months or years, the tiny gravitational pull of the satellite itself acts as a gravity tractor. Or it can use that continuous thrust to perform a highly precise kinetic impact.
A nudge, essentially.
Exactly. Over millions of miles, changing an asteroid's trajectory by just a fraction of a degree is enough to make it safely miss the Earth.
That is incredible, proving that commercial platforms can serve vital security and scientific functions, and to connect this directly back to you, the listener, and your daily life while Starship tests for the Moon and Blue Origin hunts asteroids, the immediate commercial space race is happening in low Earth orbit.
With broadband constellations.
Right. SpaceX is launching Falcon 9 rockets from Vandenberg in California and Cape Canaveral in Florida at a staggering pace. They recently deployed another 29 Starlink V2 mini-satellites. So the infrastructure driving your global broadband, your financial transactions, and your smartphone connectivity is being built out rapidly.
And that infrastructure is exactly why the space domain is no longer just a zone of peaceful exploration. As our reliance on systems like Starlink and Artemis grows, space has fundamentally transformed into a contested security environment.
Which brings us to the invisible shadow war. This is where the exclusive intelligence from the Silo Intel Ops reports from March 24th and 25th really pulls back the curtain. We are seeing primary patterns of events that are highly concerning to global decision makers.
We are.
Specifically, open-source intelligence reporting identified a Russian Lush 2 satellite conducting close proximity maneuvers near European geostationary, or GEO, satellites.
To understand the courses of action and perspectives here, we have to look at the doctrine behind these movements objectively, focusing on the mechanics without generating undue fear. The behavior of the Lush 2 satellite strongly aligns with signals intelligence, or SIGINT, collection.
Let's break down the mechanics of that. What does a close proximity maneuver actually entail in space?
Imagine two cars on a massive highway. To read a text message on the other driver's phone, you have to pull up right next to them and match their speed perfectly.
That paints a clear picture.
In geostationary orbit, which is 22,000 miles above the equator, Satellites are traveling at roughly 7,000 miles per hour to perfectly match the Earth's rotation. When the Luke 2 satellite maneuvers closely to a European communications satellite, it is matching that incredible speed to intercept focused radio frequency beams.
Listening in, basically.
Yes, mapping electromagnetic emissions and testing how the European satellite operators respond. It is a highly precise form of co-orbital inspection.
So they're pulling up alongside data streams? And additionally, the reports indicate Russia conducted an unannounced launch from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome of 16 Razvet-3 satellites, which are being billed as a domestic alternative to Starlink. If they're just for domestic broadband, why is that a security concern?
The concern lies in the dual-use nature of proliferated constellations. Let's explain what that means. Traditionally, militaries relied on a few massive, very expensive satellites. If an adversary disables one, you lose a massive chunk of your capability.
A single point of failure.
Exactly. A proliferated constellation, however, uses a swarm of hundreds or thousands of smaller, cheaper satellites in low Earth orbit. While publicly marketed as commercial or civil broadband, this architecture drastically strengthens military resilience.
Because there's no single target.
Right. If you disrupt one node, the network simply routes around it. It creates a robust backbone for military communications and potentially intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance support that can withstand terrestrial network disruptions.
And the threat spectrum goes way beyond just physical satellites moving around. The intelligence community is tracking non-kinetic threats as well.
Yes, the physical proximity operations are just the most visible layer. The broader threats analyzed by intelligence professionals include the cyber compromise of ground stations and user terminals.
Hacking them from Earth?
Yes. Cyber intrusion is a highly scalable, deniable way to disrupt space missions without firing a single weapon. Then there is electronic warfare. This involves uplink and downlink, jamming, flooding a satellite's receiver with noise so it can't hear legitimate commands, or GPS spoofing, which feeds false location data to receivers.
Which directly threatens both military command and control and civilian logistics down on the ground.
It does. It is a significant operational challenge.
Here is where it gets really interesting to me. With data moving this fast across military and commercial sectors in dozens of languages, and with satellites moving at thousands of miles an hour, how do global decision makers even track a cyber or physical threat happening 22,000 miles above Earth?
That is exactly the operational gap that tools like Stylo IntelOps are designed to close. Traditional human analysis simply cannot process the global volume of data fast enough to provide actionable early warning. The Stylo system utilizes AI vector search and lang chain embeddings.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because that sounds like heavy software jargon. Let's not just say it connects the dots. What is an embedding, and how does vector search actually work?
Let's use an analogy. Imagine a massive global library where books aren't sorted by author or title, but by the conceptual flavor of their ideas. What the AI does is it takes every single piece of information, a Russian social media post, a technical sensor report from a ground station, a change in a launch manifest, and converts it into a mathematical coordinate, a vector.
Okay.
It places that information into a multidimensional map. If a technical report about a jammed signal mathematically lands right next to a translated forum post about a new electronic warfare unit, the AI instantly recognizes the conceptual link.
So it isn't just searching for the keyword satellite. It understands the context of the events and groups them together mathematically.
Exactly. It pulls from over 250 diverse sources, runs multilingual processing across more than 20 languages simultaneously, and can flag an anomaly in under 60 seconds.
That is a massive advantage.
It is. So when that Russian Luke 2 satellite begins to drift toward a new target, decision makers aren't waiting days for a translated report. They are transitioning from reacting to events to proactively managing their courses of action in real time.
It is incredible how the software managing the intelligence is advancing just as fast as the orbital hardware itself. So, synthesizing all of this, what should we be watching for in the coming days?
Well, the most immediate event on the calendar is the Artemis II launch window, which officially opens on April 1st. If the weather and systems are go and the launch proceeds, the crew will embark on a roughly 10-day lunar flyby mission.
And we will be watching that closely.
Following that, we will see a massive, highly coordinated recovery operation involving the U.S. Navy and Marines off the coast of San Diego, California, practicing the retrieval of the Orion capsule from the Pacific Ocean.
And looking globally, we should also keep an eye on the European sector. Iser Aerospace is preparing for the launch of their Spectrum No. 2 rocket from the Andøya spaceport in Norway.
That is a critical test for European sovereign launch capability. With tensions high and access to Russian Soyuz rockets cut off, Europe needs its own reliable, independent access to space to launch its own intelligence and commercial payloads.
And, of course, SpaceX is pushing toward their next Starship flight test from Starbase, Texas.
Yes, which will be the first major test of those new Raptor 3 engines in flight.
With all of these rapidly moving pieces, from lunar launches to orbital intelligence, having the right information is absolutely critical. And that is a perfect time to remind you about the Stylo News app. You can get personal, AI-powered intelligence-style briefs just like the analysis we explored today.
It is a remarkable resource for staying informed.
It is. By downloading the mobile or computer app and subscribing at www.stylonews.com, you can track global intelligence instantly, customizing your feed from hundreds of traditional news sources and social platforms.
It gives you the ability to cut through the noise and understand the broader patterns shaping global events. And as we conclude today's analysis, we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. We've talked about commercial companies building the satellite networks that global militaries increasingly rely on. We've talked about billionaires actively planning self-sustaining cities on the moon, backed by local legislative power on Earth.
It forces us to ask a profound question. As humanity pushes further out into the solar system, who will actually write and enforce the laws of human civilization in deep space? When a commercial entity establishes a permanent resource mining presence on the lunar surface, whose jurisdiction applies?
It is a question that diplomats and international lawyers are scrambling to answer right now because the technology is moving far faster than the legislation.
It truly is a wild frontier up there. Thank you so much for listening to today's deep dive into the space domain. We love digging into these complex topics with you and unpacking how they impact our world.
It has been a pleasure.
Please feel free to request topics for future deep dives, and be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. The next time you look up at that peaceful, static night sky, just remember the silent choreography and the shadow wars happening right above your head. Have a great day.